All right.
My turn this time.
Your turn for episode 5. Love it.
I'm excited.
Good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Lending Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm John Burnham. This is Jeff Jones.
Hello.
We're excited to be with you again today, and we've got a great topic for you about buying a house before you sell, some strategies and structures. How are we going to dive into this today, Jeff?
So this one is based on input we got from one of our listeners. Thank you. Shout out, Brittany. We are going to go through about 5 different avenues of what it means to buy before you sell, what contingent, non-contingent means. So kind of going through a little bit of our lingo in our loan industry. We're going to go for like what qualifies you to not be either one of those. We're going to go through what differences of loan structures and types, portfolio loans, short-term financing options, and really just go through what the qualifications are for that. And hopefully encourage people out there that this might be the perfect time for them to buy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So why should a seller consider selling right now? If they're looking to buy, why should they sell right now? And that's what we're going to dive into.
Good.
All right, cool. Well, this is a common question. We get this multiple times per week, certainly. And you've got a lot of buyers out there that are first timers. You've got a lot of investors. You've got a lot of folks that really don't have to sell to buy, and they're not really thinking that way. And then there's the rest of us that own a home, and we would like to sell before we buy, or we'd like to buy before we sell, and we don't know which one to do, right? And so I think a lot of it comes down to the qualifications. Number one, can you qualify as a buyer? Can you qualify to buy a home before you sell your current home? And of course, that depends on a lot of different characteristics of the file. So we're going to look at income, we're going to look at assets, we're going to look at debts, and we're going to count that current home payment against that buyer when they go to buy that next home, right? So if we have enough income between one borrower or 2 borrowers, or maybe there's a co-borrower, third co-signer on there, and we can count that current home payment against you on paper, right, and qualify you for your next home to buy, then from a loan standpoint, there's no reason to wait. You don't have to sell before you buy.
Right.
So However,
I
was going to talk about the assets
the simple version is, can your income support 2 mortgages?
That's right.
Good. Okay.
That's right. Yeah. Can your income support 2 mortgages? And then where's the down payment for the purchase coming from? In many cases, we want to take it from the sale of the home, take the proceeds, and put it towards the purchase. However, if we're buying before we sell, we don't have that cash from the sale of the house. So there's a couple different strategies there that we look at. There's home equity loans that you could do. You could take out cash from your existing home while you're living there, 100,000, 200,000, depending on your equity position. We'll talk you through that, how you can qualify, how much can you get. And then we're going to have a payment associated with that debt, right? So we have a home equity payment potentially, taking that cash, also factoring in that payment, and now can we qualify based on that? So that's one scenario. And the other scenario is you have some down payment saved up, and maybe you've got 5%, 10%, and you can put a down payment without selling. So then it's back to, can your income support 2 mortgage payments? And so walking you through all that, and this always circles back to, we don't ever want our clients to disqualify themselves, right? Because there's a possibility that it does work on paper, and you may not be sacrificing your loan terms, right? And when you're in a position where you can buy, and let's say you've got a little bit of down payment saved up, you can get a larger loan than you'd probably rather have on the purchase, knowing that you're going to sell your current home. Taking that equity, you can also take a big chunk of cash and put it towards the mortgage. And that's called a recast. So I don't know if you want to touch on recasting and amortizing your payment, or if you want me to kind of dive into that. But
no, I love it. I think it's a great concept, especially when people are wanting to do a refi. They have a surplus of money, but they would love to have that affect their monthly budget, right? So their family lifestyle, they want to increase that by lowering their monthly costs on their mortgage. So if you can put over a pretty big lump sum, I think it has to be, every lender is going to have a little bit different of a parameter, but it usually starts over $10,000. and you talk to your lender and go, hey, this is what I want to do. What could this look like? And there's a small fee. It's usually anywhere from $200 to $300 usually to recast a mortgage because they're changing the amortization table.
That's right.
So what that means is when you close on your loan, you get this list of pages of numbers. It looks like you're looking at the matrix, right? So it's just line after line of number after number. So it's every month's payment, what portion's principal, what portion's interest, and your total payment. Um, and it might even have an escrow account if you're escrowing. So what that will do is that will let you know how much of your monthly payment goes towards the balance of your loan. When you recast that, it changes all of it because now you're inserting a lump sum of cash towards the principal right up front, and they have to change the entire table.
That's
So
right.
because they have to change all of that, there is a small fee to it.
Yeah, and the great thing about recasting is it's not technically a refinance,
Right.
and that's why it's just maybe $200, $200 to $300 for this recast fee. And so, what does that look like? You take
Right.
two or $300,000 from a sale or any number over 10,000, like you said, and
Mm-hmm.
you apply that to the principal, recasting the payment, so it lowers that payment. So your payment went from 5,000 a month to 3,000 a month, or whatever it was, based
Right.
on that cash injection. If you just make a big lump sum principal payment, it doesn't actually change your payment. Now, it'll change.
You have to request it.
You have to request it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll change when you pay the loan off. Obviously, you're going to pay the
Right.
loan off sooner, but you could make a big old principal payment and your monthly payment still stays the same. So you want to go through that recast process to reduce your monthly payment, and therefore, like you said, kind of be more cognizant about your monthly budget.
And that's a good scenario for people that are looking to stay in their home more than, they're like, at least 3 years I'll be in this home. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and we have this money, we want to see what this will do to our mortgage. And that's the inquiries we love, right? And we can walk you through that, or any lender can walk you through that.
Yeah.
So that's a good option.
Now, let's talk about a loan structure where, let's say you got a client that has a huge amount of equity, or maybe a paid off house. So they have a paid off house right now they want to buy before they sell. And I have a client in this scenario right now. And the sale of the house is not going to be quite enough cash to pay cash for the purchase. So you're still going to need to finance a little bit. So you're qualifying for a really big loan up front. And then once the home is sold, I mean, we're talking 80%, 90% of the mortgage
Right.
will be paid. So you come down to this tiny little mortgage payment when it's all said and done. But you're still qualifying
At the
on
full.
the principal, interest, taxes, insurance on the purchase. And we're going to hit you on paper for the taxes and insurance and maybe HOA dues or flood insurance, whatever your home obligations are. And so if there's a difference between the amount that you're buying and the proceeds that you're going to sell, then you're going to end up with a small balance, maybe $100,000, $200,000 in mortgage or whatever the balance is. And that's easy to use that recast feature and have a small payment. If you're able to buy and then when you sell, you can take the cash and pay it off in full, we actually have some programs for that.
Right.
We hear in the industry, you hear about bridge loans. There's not really a bridge loan necessarily that we use. We use something called portfolio loan, which is very similar, but it's a local community bank that will underwrite the loan with different guidelines, very, very lenient guidelines, because they know you have a ton of equity in the current house. You can buy on a very short term loan, like a 12-month loan. Sometimes it's interest only. And so it reduces that payment of the house that you just bought until you get it sold, pay cash, pay the loan off completely. So those are really nice scenarios when you have that much equity in the house that you're
Right.
selling, and you can pay cash for the one, eventually pay cash and pay the loan off on the one that you've just bought. That's not for everybody, but that's out there as well. And so how do you qualify for that? Same type of thing. We're qualifying you on the new payment of the portfolio loan that we're giving you, and we're qualifying you based on your current debts as well, with car loans and taxes and insurance and credit cards, things like that. So those portfolio loans are a really good tool if we know that the mortgage is a short-term mortgage. And why go that route versus a regular conventional loan? Well, the closing costs would be less, for one thing. And you may not have to escrow all your taxes and insurance because, again, you're going to have a paid off house once you sell your home and pay off this mortgage that you just got just for a short amount of time. So those are some different strategies. Not everybody's in that position, obviously, but that's one thing that, good use of the portfolio loan.
Yeah, and I think that's the routes we get to where you want to be is really like a roadmap that we built. So, um, even though we're loan officers, we call ourselves loan strategists.
That's right.
So there's a reason for that because, the end result you might have in your head of like what I want to get at. I will eventually sell my house. I'm eventually going to put all that equity I have in this house into my next house. How do I get there in that time frame of the next 3 months? And those 3 months, we really roadmap for you. As you're putting things on the market, but you're buying first. There's a game where you're owning both at the same time. Now, what we call conforming limits have guidelines of ratios of debts. And what you've talked about really is, can you handle both? But we have other ways where you can handle both possibly. So what we like to do for people is give you like just scenario basis. Like this is your current scenario, this is where you're going to end up. But these are the steps along the way that we can walk you through to get to what you want. And that strategy is always customized,
Well,
right?
it is, and there's also a win-win there for your agent to list and sell your home after you've moved out. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah,
So
that's good. I
you've
like
got
that.
this, because right now our market, we hear it's a perfect time, it's an amazing time to buy, and then it's a great time to sell. It's not a
Right,
great time to sell. So there's a lot of just confusion, perhaps. We still see on a daily basis there are so many buyers right now. We have a ton of pent up demand. We have
right,
some really great inventory, but we are still lacking. We're below 6 months of inventory,
right,
which is considered a balanced real estate market. So we are still technically a seller's market out there. Now, pockets may be not saying that, pockets of town, but as far as the number of homes go, and so we need more quality, well marketed, clean, home staged inventory out there
right.
that shows well that buyers are going to walk in the door and say, "This is my house." And we just had a success story this week. A
Hmm.
client listed their home. Now, this is one of those buy before they sold. So we did their house last year. We closed on their house. They put 5% down, moved into their new home. Now they're listing and selling their home, spring of 24. Good time to list right now. They listed it for 470,000, 469.5. Day one, multiple offers, $500,000 contract. Now
So they got above ask.
they got above ask 30,000.
Yeah,
How did they do that? Well, they had moved out, they had staged the home, they had prepared the home, did some small things to their agent's
right,
guidance and use that professional guidance to make it very, very appealing when your potential home buyer walks through the door. And so that's the biggest benefit I feel like of
yeah,
moving out, getting into that new home, then taking your current house. And a lot of us, we have kids, we have pets, we have personal belongings in the home, and it can be challenging sometimes to keep the home clean,
right.
to make it presentable for every buyer that walks in the door. And so, how would it feel to know that your home's being shown it's clean every time someone walks in the door? It's you're stress free about it because you've already moved out. So that
Right.
that concept of getting out before you list it and sell it, I think really helps promote a better showing experience and ultimately a higher price point. You're going to get a better contract on that house when it's staged and shows better.
Yeah, and I think those are huge selling points. It's really good. So staging, imagine everybody that is listening to this might have gone to an open house. Hopefully, it's pretty fun to do that. If you have a chance to do that, if you've never done it, please do it. It's great. You walk into somebody's existing home, and you basically feel like you're shopping, right? You're like, this could be the best purchase of my life, or this could be the worst purchase of my life. I'm rolling the dice. But a lot of people, when it comes to staging, like when we sold our last home, and they're like, hey, try to take your family photos down because the family walking in doesn't want to envision your family here. They want to envision their family here,
That's right.
right? And that just that concept alone was kind of eye opening for me on like the the best way for me to sell my own home is to not have me in it, right? It's so that they can envision themselves in it. Doesn't mean it's an empty home because staging does help with a little bit of furniture, but
And I think that is one of our challenges in the
right,
market right now is so many sellers have not bought yet. They're still living in your home,
right,
and you're still living in your home, and you have your pets, you have your dogs, you have your cats, you have your kids toys, playroom, all the things.
Right.
And is that going to prevent a buyer from buying it? No, of course not.
Unless the litter box is full.
Right, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But could it reduce your buyer pool?
Right.
Yes, and potentially. And so that's where your listing agent specialist comes in and gives you guidance and says, hey, this may show better. This will sell better when it's staged and potentially when you've moved out. So if you're
Right.
on the fence, essentially, I don't know if I should buy before I sell. This
Mhm.
success story that I just shared with you, and now their sellers are getting 30,000 over list because they went ahead and bought, moved out, prepared the home, and it sold really quickly. And I think that's where we are right now in this market is buyers want to walk in and it be turnkey, ready to go, move in ready.
And I think that, there's also something to say about there's a big desire for people to buy existing homes, not just new builds. And there's a lot of reasons for that. If you think through, what are you valuing in your home? Is it location? Is it like layout, design? Is it wear and tear and age? But if you have a pretty good, clean home that doesn't have structural problems and is staged well, and possibly in a really good, school district for their kids to grow up in, that could be a huge factor compared to a new build that might be unknown to them. Like, I don't know that neighborhood. I don't know how long the schools have been here. So location with an existing home might really be the best card that they're going to see, in their deck of viewing for that day.
That's true. No, that's
So
true. And what we're laying out too is it also bleeds into offering a contingent
yes,
contract versus a non-contingent contract.
right.
So it's kind of dovetail into that
Yes. Unpack
because
contingent, non-contingent.
contingent, non-contingent, that is a tongue twister. We'll get into that. So a lot of times we'll see that client where they really want to sell first because they want to take that equity. Again, we
Right.
touched on that. That is a big component. And from a fear factor and an affordability standpoint, I get it. You don't want to have two mortgage payments at one time potentially. Can you? Yes.
Right.
Do I want to? Not necessarily. So we get that. But the contingent, non-contingent structure is real critical when it comes to a warmer market, and we're seeing it already pick up. And so you have sellers out there that are open to taking contingent offers, right?
Well,
I'm making it
let's
up.
quickly talk about what the two are.
Sure,
So everyone wants to be non-contingent.
non-contingent.
That
Yep,
means you don't have to sell your house before you buy, right?
correct.
Contingent means I'm putting in my offer to buy this house, but I'm not going to close on it until I close on the house that I'm going to sell
That's right.
myself. And so you may be a lot of sellers, if they have two offers in their hand, one's contingent, one's non-contingent, and they're exact same price point, same terms, they're going to take the non-contingent one 9 times out of 10.
Correct.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And so it gives you more leverage as a buyer
Right.
to go in with a pre-approval or underwriting approval. We're ready to close. We don't need to sell our house first. Heck, in that case, the seller doesn't even need to know that you have a house to sell because you don't have a house to sell in theory, right? You're
Right.
buying before you sell. We're going to use that recast strategy where you've bought and now you go in and you can stage and list and sell your home, take those proceeds, put it down on the mortgage that we just did for you, and still end up with that end result of a
Right.
good amount of equity because you've taken those cash proceeds and put it towards the new loan and paid it down and recasted that payment. So
Right.
that's really what we look at when we're putting our non-contingent offers together. We're looking at the can you, right? We're discussing the risks. Hey, this is a new mortgage payment that you're going to be taking on before you sell your current mortgage payment. What kind of cash reserves do you have? What kind of liquidity position are you in? Can we take 3 to 6 months to sell our house and still make two payments? Or should we lease the house? And that's a whole nother strategy. And we'll talk
Right.
through that. And so I'm seeing a lot of benefit right now for our clients that have very low mortgage balances on their current homes. So you
Right.
have a ton of equity. You don't necessarily need to tap into that equity right now. You'd like to, perhaps, but you don't need to. Rent the home, get a nice cash flow, buy the next house, new home, resale home, whichever. Yes, the interest rates are different probably now than where they were when you got the current loan that you have on your current house. But if you look at the cash flow delta, that positive cash flow from your rental can help offset your purchase payment, and you get some depreciation, you
Right.
get some expense write off, and you get a little more tax deductions, and it can help you in that regard. So that's all part of the holistic view that we're looking at, because there's just so many components, right?
Yeah.
And always comes back to, don't disqualify yourself. You think you need to sell before you buy. You may not know for sure. Let's have a conversation and figure it out.
Yeah.
Put the puzzle together.
And leasing your house, renting your house out that you're currently living in, once you sell or once you're looking at buying, that's getting very popular
It is.
because rents continue to go up and people would rather live in a house than an apartment, especially if they have a family
That's right.
or pets. And in our world as a lender, how those finances work, just to demystify a little bit of it, we have to count it at 75%. So in a scenario where your mortgage payment, including your escrow, is $2,000, if you rent that house out for $2,000 on our paperwork, that's not a zero sum game. We have to count it at 75% of rent because there might be vacancies. So it's not a sure thing to have a lease agreement. Sometimes people back out. So to have that risk in there, it's a 25% risk of unvacant time. So that's how that is measured in the mortgage world with a conventional loan. So that means that $2,000 a month rent you're collecting is actually counted at $1,500.
That's right. So on
So,
paper, you'd have a
so on a
small
paper,
negative.
but the bonus of that is instead of a negative $2,000 cost, you have a negative $500 cost.
That's right.
But if you're charging more rent, obviously you can get to a break even, and that's the goal. Is to really
Yeah.
not have it really count
That
as a net loss, but to have it as a positive. And for that, you need a lease agreement and record of deposit.
correct. Proof that the renter is has written a
It's
deposit
going to
check, you've
start when you
cashed
move
it.
out,
Yeah,
right?
and the lease doesn't have to start right away. Like, it can be 30, 60 days out.
Perfect. Yeah.
Today's March 1st, 2024. You could have a lease starting May 1st, June 1st. We just have to have that signed, sealed, delivered, deposit check cashed, and then we know when the renter is starting. Typically, the rent period has to start before the first payment of the new mortgage
No,
that you're
that's good to
getting.
know. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the rent payment you're receiving on your exiting home needs to be received before your first mortgage payment on the next home.
That's right.
Good,
That's right.
good, good.
Exactly. So yeah, so we touched on a lot there. I mean, there are so many different ways to structure these loans. We really have seen an increase in home equity applications, because going back to that
Yeah,
initial talk about how much equity some of our clients have in their current homes right now. So using that equity, going to buy a new homestead, because you don't want to get rid of that really great mortgage rate right now. You've got 2 or 3%, let's just say, on your current home. So take out a home equity line of credit. It's going to be at a little higher rate, but the blended rate is still going to be better, perhaps, than if you sold the house and bought something. So keep that home, take the home equity line of credit, use that cash, go purchase a new home, maybe purchase an investment property. Maybe it's time to go buy that second home. And so
yeah,
we're seeing that with clients using the home equity loans as a leverage point, keeping your money in your brokerage account, keeping your money in your 401k. Let's not tap into those equities that we have to go buy real estate. Let's use the equity that we have in our house, and not the equities in the stock market, is what I meant, and use that equity in our home to leverage that and go buy more real estate.
yeah. And you said a tasty word in there. You said blended rate.
Blended rate.
So when when rates were great, we'll just use that term.
They're not great now?
They're not great now. They're actually great now. Depends on the scenario.
Historically.
I bought my first home in the sevens and then a second on the eights. But so it's great now
That's
compared to
sure.
that. But when you're sitting on a 3% current rate and people are like, I wish I could do a cash out refinance. Well, the home equity line of credit, the HELOCs, are kind of replacing that a lot of times because it's getting you a very similar situation. So if you have a 3%, and you have a $300,000 mortgage, your house is worth 600,000. Well, then you're going to get a home equity line of credit on top of that 300. So maybe you'll get $100,000 of that. So you have $300,000 sitting at 3%. You have $100,000. And what's nice with a lot of HELOCs is they work like a line of credit where you only use what you need and you can pay back what you need. But if you do an extra 100 on that and it's sitting at 7%, the blended rate is going to weigh out the 300,000 at 3% and the 100,000 at 7%, average that out for you, and you're going to be sitting in the four and a half, low fives. You know, it
Okay.
depends on how the numbers shake out.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's a
so
weighted
instead
average.
of
Mm-hmm.
redoing a cash out refinance at 7%, you could get a blended rate together with your current mortgage and a HELOC on top of it that's new
That's right.
and have much lower.
Yeah, you get to keep that existing loan in
Yeah.
place and then get a second mortgage, as you said, behind that first mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And we, of course, when rates were lower, we did a lot of cash out loans that were
Right.
one loan. We'd pay off the existing mortgage and net the difference, net
Yeah.
the cash. And we use that, our clients use that for debt consolidation, putting in a swimming pool, you name it. And so now it really, in many cases, makes more sense. Keep that loan in place. Let's get a
100%.
second
Right.
second lien. In Texas, you can borrow up to 80% of your home's equity. That's different in different states, but here it's 80% of the appraisal value total. So we just take the delta between 80% and what you currently owe, and that's what
Right.
you can take out in that home equity line of credit. And there's two different kinds of home equity lines of credit. You have the variable rate, which is a lot of times is interest only, and it is a fluctuating interest rate. And then you have a fixed rate home equity loan that could be a 10 or 15-year term, or even a 20 plus year your amortization's fixed interest rate, a fixed term. And so it just depends what you're trying to accomplish there and which tool we would use.
Yeah.
And there are lots of different ways to structure it.
Good.
So we touched on a lot.
We
We cover it
did.
all.
We have like our little notes board of what we're going to talk about, just so you all know behind the scenes, and we covered all that. But I feel like we're missing one more caveat for somebody to take away. So I feel like when we prepared this podcast, the idea was this market in a lot of people's minds is terrible for housing. A lot of people talk about that in the media. There's a lot of feelings of this could be like one of the worst housing markets in my history. What we're trying to do is basically replace the lies with the truth.
Well, for sure. There's
you
data that
know,
supports otherwise. You bet.
yes, there's a lot of so everything is scenario based in your life when you're making these big, huge financial decisions. There's not one big slice that fits everyone's piece of pie, you know. So what we want to do is customize a tailor process for you as a good loan officer and loan strategist. So really my point is don't have your mind be in a no possibility of can I buy before I sell. If you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. If you do ask, then we can see if we can get a pathway to yes for you. And that's our goal for this, is really to find a way to get you good information to make good decisions for your best purchase of your life.
That's true. And customize it for you. And that's really what our goal is and our job. So yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
tuning in today. I think that just about wraps it up.
Yes, please like and subscribe to the Lending Podcast. We're happy to be your source of information. If you want to see episodes you haven't seen yet, topics, please comment that below, and we'd love to take that for granted. Not for granted, but for the next episode. But thank you so much. Have a great day.
Take care. See you soon.
Bye.